Hello and welcome to Wild Logic. Welcome from the corners of the internet, both known and unknown. We're going to do a tarot reading that's about kind of sinking into the energy of a situation. It's not going to be predictive. It's going to be intended to be grounding, give you a sense of seeing a wheel of movement, of shift, a potential, an option, a new story, a pattern that might give you a new way to consider your situation. So you apply it as you will. And again, welcome from the wilds of the internet. It's really nice to be sharing this time with you. Before we get started, we're going to tap in to some ancient wisdom from the Tao Te Ching, translation by Stephen Mitchell. 34 came up. The great Tao flows everywhere. All things are born from it, and it doesn't create them. It pours itself into its work, yet it makes no claim. It nourishes infinite worlds, yet it doesn't hold on to them. Since it is merged with all things and hidden in their hearts, it can be called humble. Since all things vanish into it, and it alone endures, it can be called great. It isn't aware of its greatness. Thus it is truly great. This is really interesting. I was just revisiting some quotes from The Courage to be Disliked, which, interesting Adlerian psychology. Trigger warning here, my friends. It says that trauma doesn't exist, it makes some bold assertions, I think partially to get people's attention. But it's, and that obviously the impact of harm is real. And the thing is, it can shape how we see ourselves. And I think the power of that book is to realize that we have the right to tell our own story. No one else can tell it for us. And so whatever that might be, and that not everyone's going to like us, as someone who came from a lot of neglect and trying so hard to be loved, to, be part of the family seen and loved, trying so hard. I guess I've just spent my whole life trying so hard, and it has, for a period of time, that was authentic for who I was. But as I discover that effort is no longer who I want to be, I'm starting to shed that. And there's so much power in facing great adversity. And I do encourage all of you to claim that, but you don't even have to necessarily, what it's called. And I think this comes back to the Tao, the language labels can really get in the way. That push and pull of how we talk about ourselves can really get in the way. And you want to move, you want to grow, you want to evolve. You don't want to be defined by anyone or anything else. Yet we do that as a survival mechanism, because when we're growing up, we have to adapt to the environment we're in. And we're primed to learn within that environment. So the Eight of Wands is about movement. Movement through being. Vision that is self-defined. So this is really important, right? Because you want to decide where you go. You want to be in charge of your destination, right? And this is where the Hangman comes in, because we need to pause to actually have this internal movement. Because if we're constantly in the fray, it's really hard to vision. So, and it's really interesting. Because again, so much of life is about embracing the positive. No. I mean, sure, like positive meaning momentum, meaning your direction. But I think to even know what that is for oneself, you have to be willing to see as much as is appropriate for you to see at that time. We're not meant to see everything in every corner of the universe all at once, right? That's, this like Tao sees it all but doesn't even know it because it's so expansive, right? And we're here to be ourselves. Certainly embracing our spirituality is a part of that, but we are allowed to be human in it, right? So here is the paradox. And this is what requires the pause. One of the things that I've really been embracing lately is, I like to dig around to understand. And it can be weird because not everyone is really wanting to dig around. I've been like digging around in the history of coaching and Tony Robbins, and he's an individual that was deeply traumatized growing up and created a coaching empire. Certainly not the only one riding that wave. It's not an energy that I want to pattern myself off of. However, there's so much of that energy. It's also like, it's not all bad. And it's like, I can see it's not in alignment of like where I want to move to quickly, but it's like very persuasive, right? And so here we have the 5 of Swords. And this is about this like mental wars. And I think the thing is like, to come to internal peace, you might have to like see through certain battles, right? And I think that's fine. I think that's one of the things I'm coming to peace with is like, I like to intellectually wrestle with things. And not everyone is doing that. Not everyone's doing it with the same materials or content in the same way that I am. But it's like my nature. And I actually really enjoy it. I've gone into like all sorts of little vortexes of the world because I'm open-minded. I like to see and understand things. But with that, I need to process and come through it. And so it's like important to take this pause and then wrestle with it. Because everything has its place. Every single card within this tarot has its place. And if you have resistance to it, that's fine. But it's also an invitation for you to like look at where, like, how is that energy not okay, to understand that. We move through so many things in our lives, right? The Tao, the universe, our planet, there's like a dualism. Everything exists. And what you're pushing against starts to become a big part of your internal landscape. So it's almost, and that's okay, because maybe that's what your process is. But what I really like here is the 8 of Cups, which is about departure. It's about like walking away from something. And what I like about this is there's this whole like thing about quitting, that we're taught not to quit. And that actually can, if you like to explore a variety of ideas, you have to be able to quit them when you're ready to put them down, right? You want to like pick it up, check it out, and then move along if it's not for you. So that ability to come and go, just like regardless of what anyone else has to say, that is the freedom. And it doesn't mean that we're going to be neglectful, right? We'll fulfill our commitments or renegotiate them based on what we discover is the truth. And we have to take responsibility. But I think this is also, where I'm like getting this message to move slower. So much in our world like is like FOMO, like don't miss out. You got to keep moving. You got to keep doing. But that makes it really hard to process where we got to go. And so this is inviting you to slow down, process, because you're in this state of internal movement and vision. And you're going to have to work your way through certain things. And however that is, when it comes to the mind is going to want to go through a process. Theoretically, I don't know. Like, it doesn't have to be that. It could be whatever it is for you. But for me, that's how I work, at least. There's I have to satisfy my own intellect at times, and it's cool, it's powerful, it's fun if I don't judge it. And so this walking away, this power to move as you need to, don't let anyone I'm recently changing up how I do stuff at the gym, right? And if leaving the gym doesn't mean quitting on your physical health, obviously, but it can feel that way because of how we've taught ourselves. But when you walk away from the things, and even you can always go back. Just because you walk away from something, you can be like, oh, well, that was good. And I actually did that. I left the gym. I went back to the gym. And now I'm going to use it, but in a different way for now. But that frees up my energy. I was definitely putting myself in an unnecessary bind. I was wrestling over things that it turns out aren't that big of a deal, don't really matter. But I had to go through that process of answering those questions for myself. But ultimately though, it's about learning to overrate your intuition. This has been a journey because my instincts are on, but something is simple, more straightforward, like the gym is a great place because it's the other things are maybe more nuanced. But starting to learn to trust your gut. I've also done some deep dives on some people that were, prevalent in spirituality, that made a scene. And I was like, what is going on? I'm this feels off to me. But people around me found it intriguing. I also found it intriguing, but I found it to be intriguing and off, right? Because there's a lot of sensationalism. I'm thinking of Corey Goode and David Wilcox. Don't know a ton about them. They just weren't fully my cup of tea, but I felt drawn in because other people were drawn into that. And it kind of was I went to an event and then it was being brought into the event in an unexpected way. So, but recently I found out it has been made, there's been a lot of clarity brought forward about how it wasn't authentic. It was a story, which I'm okay, well that's because it was some wild stuff. And the people were loosely connected to folks. And this is the thing is we don't always know. And we can never fully know. Maybe they're saying it's false because they were pressured to do so. That's possible, certainly. But regardless, it's not where I'm meant to be. I'm someone who's really meant to work with intuition, creativity, plants, botany, nature, ecology, and even those systems, obviously there's a lot of friction there, but this so welcome the divine masculine, truth, clarity, the sun, right? So your intuition is really worth getting to know in whatever way that will come forward for you. I also like how those both reduce down to 2. But the divine masculine, even though this is the sun card, it's making me think of the emperor, right? Because that could represent the divine masculine energy. And that's will. And my will has been really tampered with because of my, I've had difficulty sticking to my guns, which ultimately I'm very open-minded, but there's a lot of pressure that's asserted. We live in a world where there's this way of intellectually dominating one another. And that's not how I operate. It's not how like but it will confuse me. It's not how I want to flow, right? No one really wants to be convinced. But on some level we do, right? Because certainty is more comfortable than mystery. There are things that we can know, and there are things that we can't know. Yeah. So prosperity sisters are happiness and joy, right? So this is like really speaking to, is whatever you're like, are you being pushed down a path because of fear? Like that internal compass of like, like this might even be interesting to me, but the way that this is being presented to me is dysregulating me. And when I'm dysregulated, my ability to use my intuition is not cool. I need to pause, take a step back. And I mean, and a lot of persuasive techniques, marketing techniques are intended to like pressure you, dysregulate you, take you out of that space of your center. So sure, the information, there might be something to it. It might be useful. I mean, logically, just because there's pressure involved does not mean that the information is not useful. However, it's not a good starting point for any journey to be like forced. So celebrate your wins. And this is something I've really been like raking myself over the coals for the times I've gone against my intuition, but I've also followed it a lot, and I've maintained my openness and willingness to learn and grow, because like openness, I think, is a really important quality. And it's actually helped me get to that, because I've had the amount of experiences because of my openness. I know more than I would have if I just stayed still, right? And it's helped me get better at knowing when to leave. And also knowing like when it just doesn't matter that much, right? I don't have to drop everything just because it's weird. I can just be a human being in this world and focus my energy on the specific things I want to address, and let some of the mess be other people's like thing to like. We only have so much processing power each day, and we can easily get drawn into so many different little channels. And so I really do, like, with that in mind, I really appreciate your presence. If this message is resonating, if it's giving you something useful, I would appreciate you subscribing, liking this video, if this content is of value, because that's how information spreads, right? And this is something that I'm really dedicating myself to, is putting more energy where like I see something that I want more of in the world. So if that's the case here, like please like and subscribe, share a comment. Would love to hear from you. But that I think is just a mindset, right? And it's interesting because here's self-worth and trade. So to an extent, right, on this like subconscious level, if we're supporting things that we don't really feel aligned with, like, and there's the whole process to this. So there's ultimately no judgment, right? But there is a level of self-worth in like, if we're supporting something that we like ultimately feel a big ick with, like whatever that might be, it's a reflection. And so to really start to engage and trade with the things that align with your values as much as you are possible, right? It takes time to build into this. So part of this whole growth is really tuning into where you can start and what makes sense. I think information, like having choosing information and letting that also be like a coming and going. There have been so many channels on YouTube where I tap in, like really love it, and then I tap out because I got the information I needed. And sometimes maybe I'll maintain a subscription depending on what it is. Sometimes I'm like, oh, but it turns out I no longer feel comfortable subscribing to this, because I like to really explore a lot of different avenues. But really thinking about that. Okay, so the Alchemist. Oh, I feel like I didn't completely finish that thought. So all media, all information you consume, books, podcasts, anything, there isn't there's the information, there's the vibe of the person. All of it is coming in and affecting you both consciously and subconsciously. And really starting to notice what kind of state it puts you in. My goal here is to tell my clearest version of authentic truth that I can, and while also and part of that is to be uplifting and calm and not create a predictive environment with these cards, because you get to decide your own cycle. Okay, so we have the Alchemist, balance, invention, and destruction. That is cool too, because this is it's really, it's kind of like the internal of this. So I was at my therapist earlier today, and I was talking, I've really been it was honestly temperance card energy. I feel like right now I'm I walk the middle path, right? I'm really dedicated to not closing off while also being mindful of what I entertain, right? And so I am trying to stay in that. And so that balance, it's like the temperance card, which is like a pressure cooker of bringing things together. So I'm really feeling that. And so once you really start to learn how to balance what you're bringing in and out, you get to start to rediscover everything from a lot of different angles. Your prism of what you've experienced is going to be, let's see how this, you get the eyeballs to show up on the camera, right? So you're just going to start to, boom, expand your vision. Oh, I really like how the Citadel deck is playing into this. Right, and then we have the Pilgrim, opportunities and growth, right? So as you start to rediscover and transition, weave this new fabric, right? Kind of like this cloth here, which is a very special cloth that is bringing a lot of energy, ancient traditions, but really, this is a very intense energy cloth. Not so much earth, a lot of electricity to, fit the environment that it is speaking to. But opportunities and growth, the Pilgrim. So starting to have this light, this lantern, as you explore new realms. Ooh, this is nice. I'm feeling this energy coming through here of what this collective message is. And it's kind of a warm energy. Speaking of warm, okay, the first animal card we have out is the ant, which is a little different than warm. It's hot, it's fiery. It's a need to cool off at times, which I think really represents the Hangman. So we'll see what we'll look more deeply at all these animals cards. These are kind of messages of how to balance this energy. Please take what resonates and leave the rest behind. So we have the Vulture. And the Mouse. Which is interesting because the Vulture, I guess vultures don't really go for living mice, but certainly, whoa, okay, that just had a whole spillage. Cards. We have the turtle, but I'm not sure exactly how I want these all to be yet. Okay, there we go, the dragonfly. This is what I'm being told to do. So the turtle is about being at home in the self. And so we're gonna pop through these. So I do this a little bit differently each time. We have these air cards kind of supporting it, and they're kind of like holding the space for this. And so these messages, take what resonates. You don't have to do this all. These are just some suggestions. If anything like hits and you feel that it's going to help, go for it. Okay. So Vulture, guardian and purifier, essential for rebalance, right? So here we go, the temperance. When in balance, clarifies, reveals wisdom. When out of balance, dramatic and aggressive. To bring into balance, clean your space and sage. Boom. I mean, I've been doing this Vulture, like, honestly, for years, but really starting to get just less is so important, but it can be really challenging. So don't rush it. I wouldn't suggest, but this is up to you to follow your own guidance, just to get rid of everything at once, because the chaos can be comforting, and it can be, actually, for me at least, really overstimulating to clear too much at once. So I am really starting to get into the vibe of, a little bit at a time actually is what is sustainable. It's like anything, right? So if you really want to make changes, go in layers, vulture it a little bit each day. Take what is ready to go and then let it, the next layer, it's good to push your self out of your comfort zone, but if you push yourself out of your safety zone, it's gonna make it hard to sustain the changes you make, right? That's been a big lesson. Okay, so here we have the Dragonfly holding up the other end, master of light, illusion, and the mind. Another clarity. That's really cool. When in balance, sees clearly, joyful, magical. When out of balance, can't concentrate, busy mind, boom. And so focus on the breath. So I really think that these could work together, because the more of the Vulture you can utilize, the more Dragonfly that can come in. Clean your space. So clarifies, right? They're both about clarity, which I think is really what we're talking about here, right? It's this vision, and intuition, that inner vision, that felt vision, that knowingness. Okay, this is cool. I love this. And it's cool in a way that's not overwhelming. I feel in my spiritual journey, there have been times where things are so exciting, but they're really hard to sustain. And I think the fire ant, while I'm saying that, is probably gonna get into that. So aggression, rigid thinking, and following orders. Okay, this is the kind of stuff that makes it hard to leave. And this is also kind of a shadow version of the divine masculine. So when in balance, thoughtful, disciplined, right? That will. But when out of balance, argues, excess heat, and gossips. And I think, so solo time and walks at night, because this hangman, really getting to the core of who you are. When we are reactive, there's something at play. And if you don't take that time to figure out and digest what that is, if you just keep moving and pushing, you're going to get deeper into that spot where things don't make sense. Okay, let's check out the mouse. It's again a similar but different kind of energy. Detail-oriented, small-minded, nitpicky, and nervous. So it's not as explosive, right? But it's this freneticness. When in balance, organized, resourceful, prepared. When out of balance, busy with no purpose, right? So this is like this will, but this other side of it. Very cool. To bring into balance a meaningful project, right? So time to be clear, to know where you want to direct your energy. Back to that like 8 of Wands, like that's, hidden under there at this point. But that movement, vision, 3 of Wands, momentum, 8 of Wands, right? But that time to get clear and then to move it. Okay. Turtle. Ancient soul, grounded, trusting, at home in the self. It's wonderful to be in the presence of a turtle personality. Like the beaver, the turtle has a strong relationship to the earth and water elements simultaneously. This helps to ground and connect them to the deeper truths of life, no matter where their travels lead them. Turtle energy is behind all great writers and storytellers. Oh, that's so cool. Because we've been talking about like shaping our own story. As they collect life experiences under their shell for later use. The most potent turtle energy helps us close all the other books and begin to tell our own true tale. Yes. And that's what that authentic way of telling your story. When in balance, peaceful, adventurous, and productive. When out of balance, slows down to a halt. To bring into balance an adventure. And you get to define what kind of adventure is an adventure for you. Perhaps the adventure is, cleaning out that closet that you've wanted to go. Like it could be a trip down memory lane. It could be a day trip. It could be a trip around the world. But wherever you happen to go, I just want to say thank you. And although we don't know one another, I'm rooting for everybody on this planet to find that authentic aspect of themselves. Because I really do believe that in that truth, we will be able to harmonize. So I really appreciate your time and presence here. I'll see you next time, all right? Bye.